El imposible realizado. 30º Festival Internacional de Poesía de Medellín.
Buenas noches a todos a quienes nos acompañan esta noche de poesía nuevamente. Muchísimas gracias por seguir conectados con nosotros en este 30º Festival Internacional de Poesía de Medellín. Un festival que se celebra bajo unas condiciones un poco extrañas a las que solía acontecer en la antigüedad o anteriormente, porque este año, el año de la pandemia, nos ha invitado a que nos reunamos a compartir la poesía desde la virtualidad. Es un año que ha sido oscuro, oscuro no solo por el confinamiento al que nos hemos visto enfrentados, sino también oscuro por las guerras, las masacres, los asesinatos con los que nos despertamos diariamente en las noticias y en los medios de comunicación. Pero esperamos que este festival sea una luz de esperanza en medio de toda esa oscuridad, que sea una buena noticia, un buen encuentro, un buen espacio para compartir con ustedes algo que nos movilice el alma para bien, para cosas positivas. Hoy es un día muy especial porque nos acompañarán dos poetas de un país muy grande y muy acuático que es Filipinas. Hoy nos acompañará Milagros T. Dumdum y Simeon Dumdum Jr. Ya nos han acompañado de este país de Filipinas Alfred Yuson, Marjorie Vasco, Alison Kwa, Geminoe Shabbat, Muki Katibak y Dina Roma. Hoy les habla Alejandra Gómez como la presentadora y les recuerdo que pueden seguir todas nuestras transmisiones a través del Facebook Festival de Poesía MED, a través de YouTube, Revista Prometeo, y a través de nuestra plataforma virtual www.festivaldepoesiademedellin.org. Pueden ver por esta plataforma nuestras transmisiones en vivo y en diferido. Les recordamos también que para hacer posible la realización de este 30º Festival Internacional de Poesía de Medellín, se han juntado muchos esfuerzos y voluntades de diferentes personas y organizaciones, entre ellos cerca de 200 poetas alrededor de todo el mundo, lo que quiere decir que este festival positivamente está llegando a casi todos los rincones del mundo y está permitiendo que nos visibilicemos como sociedad unidos desde otras cosas diferentes que nos mueven el alma. También por un pequeño grupo de lectores, presentadores e intérpretes que hacen parte de la revista Prometeo y por un grupo de equipo técnico que es el que hace posible que ustedes puedan conectarse con nosotros y vernos en vivo y en diferido a través de las diferentes plataformas que les he mencionado. Pero cabe resaltar que también organizaciones como la Alcaldía de Medellín, su Secretaría de Cultura Ciudadana, nos han apoyado, igual que el Ministerio de Cultura de Colombia y su programa de concertación nacional para la cultura. Y claramente una organización que es una fundación que nos acompaña desde hace muchos años, que es la Fundación Right Livelihood Award. Entonces, sin más, demos de la bienvenida a nuestro primer invitado, que es Simeon Dumdum Jr. Él nació en Filipinas en 1948. Ha publicado 14 libros. Entre estos libros, algunos de poemas como El regalo del sueño, y te escribo lado, Caminata sin objetivo, Río Fiel y Palanca Memorial por la Poesía Inglesa y Premio Nacional del Círculo de Críticos de Manila. Ganador de 5 premios Antiguamente, publicó los libros de ensayos Amor en tiempo de La Cámara, Mi promesa de amor no se puede romper y Ah, desierto, un viaje a través del tiempo sagrado. Démosle la bienvenida entonces a nuestro poeta Simeon Dumdum Jr.
Good day, friends. I am Simeon Dumdum Jr. from Cebu, an island in the Philippines. I would like to read 3 poems, both in the original English and in Spanish translation. The translation was done by Miss Azucena Pase. I usually write my poems in the afternoon in a coffee shop with my wife, Maria Milagros, who is likewise a poet and who will read her poems at this festival. I have been writing poems since I was 19 years old, and to date have published 11 collections. I write poems because I seek to express experience in a new and memorable way. Of late, world events have stimulated me into writing poems, such as the bombing of a church in Sri Lanka, the rallies in Hong Kong, the knife attack on London Bridge, the pandemic, and the death of George Floyd in Minneapolis. I have no illusions that my poems will change the world, but they help me put the world's problems in a metaphysical perspective. I am thankful for the Medellín International Literary Festival for annually bringing the poets from different countries together to read their poems before an international audience, even as is happening at this time because of the pandemic in a virtual manner. In doing so, it somehow unites the world and suggests a basis for world peace. W.H. Auden said that poetry makes nothing happen. I agree. But while a poem is no silver bullet, its words can lodge in the brain longer than any bullet. They haunt the listener and, however so subtly, influence his behavior. For instance, when I find myself having too much idle time, I would remember this line from Shakespeare's Henry IV, quote, "If all the year were playing holidays, to sport would be as tedious as to work," unquote. And when I am in the garden tending to the roses, Robert Herrick would come to mind, quote, "And this same flower that smiles today, tomorrow will be dying," unquote. The first poem that I will read is entitled America. I was listening to a song by Simon and Garfunkel entitled America and was taken by the line, quote, "And the moon rose over an open field," unquote. It triggered me to write the poem. America. I listened to him speak of West Virginia. He was born in Leyte, but was living in West Virginia. He spoke as they do in the movies, and as Ronald Reagan does on the radio. Even the way he said Virginia was better than the way Hinying, a girl I knew whose hair fell down a shoulder like the tail of a bird, said her name, which was Virginia. And on that warm evening, I told myself, that's where I want to be, in West Virginia, or New York, or San Francisco, because cousin says everything there is big and cheap. Big chickens, big eggs, big buildings, and big flowers. Cousin looked at me and said, yes, big roses, tea roses. And he was about to mention other roses, but the moon was rising and it was bigger than in America. And here is the Spanish translation. America. Lo escuché hablar sobre Virginia Occidental. Él nació en Leyte, pero vivía en Virginia Occidental. Hablaba como lo hacen en las películas y como Ronald Reagan en la radio. Incluso su manera de decir Virginia era mejor que la de Hinying, una chica que yo conocía, cuyo cabello le caía del hombro como la cola de un pájaro. Decía su nombre que era Virginia. Y en aquel atardecer caluroso me dije a mí mismo que es allí donde me gustaría estar, en Virginia Occidental, o en Nueva York, o en San Francisco, porque el primo dice que todo allí es grande y barato. Pollos grandes, huevos grandes, rascacielos y flores grandes. El primo me miró y dijo, sí, rosas grandes, rosas de té, e iba a mencionar otras rosas, pero la luna fue creciendo y era más grande que en América. Ferdinand Marcos ruled the Philippines from 1965 to 1986, for the most part putting it under martial law. This is the setting of my next poem, Third World Opera. Third World Opera. When he kicked the governor, the applause was deafening. Everybody stood up and cheered. Even a baby could. So he thought. Such an adulation he never had in his career. And it was for an act his role had not demanded. Why? He was about to burst into song after kissing the leading lady when he saw the governor smiling in the front row. And he remembered the dictator, the governor's master, and his sins against the people. For his part, the governor deserved credit. That he loved Vivaldi, who he thought painted The Last Supper, was well known. Better known was his passion for the theater. And the tragic thing that could happen was for one to think his honor a fool in matters of the stage. And so, when the actor descended in surprising haste and gave him a real kick in the groin, he felt honored, marveling with gratitude at how much theater had progressed, and joined the crowd in the applause. And here is the Spanish translation. Ópera del tercer mundo. Cuando pateó al gobernador, el aplauso fue ensordecedor. Todo el mundo se levantó y vitoreó. Incluso un bebé dijo yuhu. Así pensó él. Semejante adulación nunca tuvo en su carrera, y fue por una acción que su papel no había exigido, porque estuvo a punto de estallar en una canción tras besar a la protagonista. Cuando vio al gobernador sonriente en primera fila, se acordó del dictador, del amo del gobernador y de sus pecados contra el pueblo. Por su parte, el gobernador, que merecía crédito porque amaba a Vivaldi, de quien pensaba pintó La Última Cena, era bastante conocido. Mejor conocida fue su pasión por el teatro, y lo trágico que podía pasar era para uno considerar su honor de tonto en asuntos del escenario. Por tanto, cuando el actor bajó con una prisa sorprendente y le dio una patada real en la ingle, se sintió honrado, maravillándose con gratitud por cuanto ha progresado el teatro, y se unió a la multitud en aplauso. When I wrote the third and last poem, I was thinking of how the youth were fond of having their bodies tattooed. It became a fashion statement. I saw its possibilities as a political statement. For instance, a statement relating to reproductive rights and immigration. And here's the poem. Love makes the world go round. He was wild. In her 6th month, he had the map of the world tattooed on her belly. And then, without saying goodbye, he left for America. In her last trimester, her belly grew into a tight and shiny globe. The northern hemisphere stretched around the north pole of her navel. She would rub the southern slope of her abdomen and feel the kick of the fetus between the United States and Canada. And then she would wonder in which of these countries he would be now. Since then, she'd had 5 men in as many years and 5 children. This was to keep her hands holding the globe of her belly. This was her only way of feeling the world and of going to America. And here's the Spanish translation. El amor hace girar al mundo. Fue salvaje. En su 5º mes de estado tenía el mapa del mundo tatuado en su barriga, y después, sin decir adiós, él partió hacia América. En su último trimestre, su barriga había crecido en un ajustado y brillante globo. El hemisferio norte se estiró alrededor del polo norte de su ombligo. Frotaría el vertiente sur de su abdomen y sentiría la patada del feto entre Estados Unidos y Canadá. Y entonces se pregunta, ¿dónde estaría él ahora en estos países? Desde entonces ha estado con 5 hombres, tantos como los años, y 5 hijos. Hizo esto para seguir cogiendo con las manos el globo de su barriga. Esto fue su único modo de sentir del tacto al mundo y de irse a América. Thank you very much. Muchas gracias.
Y a continuación, le damos la bienvenida a María Milagros T. Dumdum, quien nació en Filipinas en 1948. Completó su educación universitaria con un título en Humanidades y una especialización en inglés y matemáticas. Después de enseñar inglés y matemáticas en su ciudad natal, realizó estudios de posgrado en antropología en la Universidad de Silliman entre 2016 y 2019. Escribió y publicó 2 libros de haikus, Caer, sobre agua, tranquila y sensación de llovizna, con Simeon Dumdum Jr. Publicará pronto La renga, el suspiro de cientos de hojas. Algunos de sus haikus han aparecido en publicaciones internacionales. Estructuras orientales, haiku puro, una publicación en línea. Antología de la Sociedad Británica del Haiku 2019 y Debajo de Basho, entre otras. Uno de ellos fue elegido entre otros 150 enviados en todo el mundo para ser presentado en la Competencia Internacional de Haiku Ilustrado New Space 2060 Unión Europea Japón 2016. Bienvenida María Milagros T. Dumdum.
Hi. Greetings from my country, the Philippines. I am Maria Milagros Teleron Dumdum from Cebu, Central Philippines. I am a financial advisor by profession, working with a multinational company for the past 30 years. Now retired, but still actively serving my clients. I have had a number of roles in my life as an only daughter, sister, mother, wife, grandmother, leader, teacher, anthropologist, newscaster, government information employee, barber, driver, though sometimes mistaken as lawyer, doctor, even as an actress. Little do people know that I am also a poet. I write poetry between sales calls and during coffee breaks with my poet husband, who is also reading at this International Poetry Festival. Of late, I have published 2 haiku collections, Falling on Quiet Water and The Feel of Light Rain. Falling on Quiet Water, published in 2018, and The Fall or The Feel of Light Rain, published in 2020. Another book, a collaborative work with my husband, Simeon Dumdum Jr., will come out in the coming quarter. The title is The Sigh of 100 Leaves, The Sigh of 100 Leaves, a renga of 100 tangka. I write mainly for pleasure, with the desire to document in a unique way through poetry my experience with nature, which includes childhood memories, conversations with myself in the face of the marvelous, and in a deeper way with my God, the source of all beauty. I believe that poetry is a change agent. On a personal note, I started writing haiku seriously when I was battling with a recurring back pain, which lasted for a month and kept me home and away from work. I would write 2 to 3 haiku a day and finished 100 in 5 months. I was able to see with new eyes my everyday, no longer as an endless waiting for healing, but a timeless and delightful journey towards being whole. To date, I have written 580 haiku, a 500-line renga, and 30 haibuns, or short poetic prose. Let me read to you a sequence of 10 haiku with Spanish translation, which was made by a friend named Azucena Pase of Cebu, Philippines. For a better understanding of how each haiku came to be, I shall introduce the haiku with a short prose. So what I will be reading is a haibun, or a short poetic prose. Haiku and haibun are Japanese forms. The haiku is a 3-line poem with 17 syllables, or 575, with 2 images and an insight. I would like to take this opportunity to express my heartfelt gratitude for having been nominated with my husband, Simeon Dumdum Jr., by the Manila, Philippines Club Medellín and the 28-year-old writers group in Cebu, Women in Literary Arts, of which I am a member and was a past president. Let me thank my constant companion, poet husband, and my loving family. I sincerely thank the 30th Medellín Poetry Festival organizers for the opportunity to gather with a bigger family of poets worldwide to forge a stronger community of change agents who would heal the world through the beauty of the written and the spoken word of poetry. Allow me to start my reading. The first haiku. On a windy day, the road to school, still dotted with puddles from the previous night's rain, would be a desired path. Near the school gate stands an old tall tree, always welcoming with its angel wings. To a child's heart, wings and flying are quite inseparable, and the idea makes the being quiver. Look, young leaves flutter, angel wings on every branch. The tree wants to fly. Mira, nuevas hojas se agitan, alas de ángel en cada rama. El árbol quiere volar. Haiku 2. Days when the mind is active are also bright spaces for conversations over coffee in a cool, sunlit garden with boundless shadows, cast by deciduous trees from whose branches may intermittently fall yellowed leaves. They, the leaves, fall without warning between morning and nighttime. Towards midnight, perhaps, the leaves continue to fall with no one noticing, except the mind, its thoughts becoming the leaves, falling into the quiet, awaiting the first cockcrow. Haiku. How deep the silence of dawn. I will hold my breath for the first cockcrow. Qué profundo silencio del alba. Contendré mi aliento para el primer canto del gallo. Next haiku. This next haiku I wrote for my husband on his birthday. And I said, decades back, I saw your bell-bottom pants flapping in the cool evening wind when you crossed the avenue from the office to your university. How the scene moved me from the shadows to the stars. Haiku. I saw a bird swirl from the shadows to the sun. My heart, its wing beat. Vi a un pájaro revolotear desde las sombras al sol. Mi corazón su aleteo. Next. Mother was 91 when she first fell from her bed, as she missed sitting properly on the bed's end while putting on makeup, the best part of her daily chore. She had to have a right hip replacement surgery. She fell again the year after, and yet another year. Each time a successful surgery, except for the last one, when the wound would not heal completely, and her journey would go nowhere but downhill. Haiku. Why is memory much like a frail twig that breaks with just a whisper? ¿Por qué la memoria semeja tanto una frágil ramita que se quiebra con solo un susurro? Next haiku. Some days are promising. Some simply seem to put things at a standstill. Moving on, however, one realizes one pauses for silence has a voice and asks to be listened to. Haiku. The script of silence. Still shadows of leaves, clotheslines in the summer sun. El guión del silencio. Sombras calladas de hojas, tendederos bajo el sol de verano. Next. When people look at you but do not see you, it is time to leave. Haiku. You look but don't see. The heart in its loneliness misses the roses. Miras, pero no ves. El corazón en su soledad extraña las rosas. Next, haiku. In the afternoons, I always drive westward, where I could watch the vermilion setting sun move with me, as if in a dance, homebound every time. Haiku. The descending sun, the world waiting for beauty, mothers calling home. Sol poniente, el mundo espera la belleza, las madres llaman a casa. Next haiku. Clothes have secrets. What one wears has a hidden story. One's wardrobe makes a statement, which no one knows except perhaps the wearer. And they too are part of the journey of years. Pants, casual clothing, lingerie, raincoat, shawl or hat. But how intriguing if clothes had secrets that could not be told. Haiku. The sound of squeezing as the women wash the clothes blends with their sighing. El sonido de exprimir mientras las mujeres lavan la ropa se mezcla con sus suspiros. Ninth haiku. During summer vacations, childhood means mountain treks with family and friends, hide-and-seek games, sleeping on mats spread out on bamboo floors, evenings lighted by kerosene lamps, drawing water from a deep well. Haiku. Looking down the well, water dark and bottomless. I can't see my face. Mirando abajo al pozo, agua oscura y sin fondo. No puedo ver mi rostro. Now the 10th and the last haiku. The smile of the heart when love reigns is indelible and can change to bright hues any shade of darkness of the spirit. This one gentle light, merging you and everyone, comes from this candle. Esta única luz suave que te une con todo el mundo viene de esta vela. That ends my reading. Thank you very much, my dear fellow poets and participants of the 30th Medellín International Festival. I bring to you the love and warm greetings from my country, the Philippines. To God be the glory.
Muchas gracias a Milagros y a Simeón por haber compartido con nosotros su palabra poética esta noche. Ahora queremos compartir con todos ustedes algunas palabras que nos está diciendo el público. Jojo Presnedi nos dice, profundo, hermoso, muchas gracias. Haces que nuestro país y el mundo se sienta orgulloso. Rafael Villatoro nos dice, saludos desde Guatemala, que continúe brillando la luz de la poesía. Saludos a Rafael y que así sea, que la luz de la poesía siga acompañándonos, no solo hasta este 10 de octubre que continúa nuestra programación, sino a lo largo de todos los momentos difíciles y oscuros por los que pasemos como humanidad. Carlos Andrés nos dice, qué preciosas imágenes de Filipinas, de la ciudad, de sus campos, son evocadoras, apaciguan el corazón. Esperamos que todos, igual que Carlos Andrés, hayan disfrutado de las imágenes que han compartido con nosotros los poetas al compartir su lectura. Gustavo Adolfo Becerra nos dice, el corazón en su soledad extraña las cosas, y yo también. Muchas gracias, Gustavo Adolfo, por tus mensajes y a todos los que nos han escrito sus mensajes y sus comentarios. Gracias por acompañarnos en esta velada de poesía, una nueva transmisión del Festival Internacional de Poesía de Medellín en sus 30 años. Recuerden que vamos hasta el 10 de octubre con programación todos los días y recuerden que tenemos varias plataformas para que puedan visualizar cada transmisión. Tenemos YouTube, como se los dije antes, Revista Prometeo, tenemos Facebook como Festival de Poesía MED y tenemos nuestra plataforma virtual www.festivaldepoesiamedemedellin.org. Allí en la plataforma podrán encontrar las memorias virtuales de este 30º Festival Internacional de Poesía. A continuación, los dejaremos con las memorias de los 30 años del festival, un pequeño compendio de algunos videos y sucesos que han acontecido durante todos estos 30 años para que ustedes los disfruten y vean qué ha pasado con nosotros durante todo este tiempo. Agradecemos de nuevo su presencia amorosa acompañándonos esta noche y esperamos seguir contando con ustedes para el resto de las transmisiones que nos quedan y de las sorpresas que trae el festival. Un abrazo para todos, que la luz brille en su corazón desde la poesía. Nos vemos.
El imposible realizado. 30º Festival Internacional de Poesía de Medellín.
Circuito de Poesía Mundial. 1. Los poetas llegan y saludan con la mano. 2. Los poetas reciben sus cupones para el desayuno. 3. Los poetas escuchan los discursos. 4. Los poetas toman su turno para subir al escenario. 5. Las poetas acuden a una recepción en el jardín. 6. Los poetas hacen fila para saludar al príncipe. 7. Los poetas son llevados a un centro vacacional con playa. 8. Los poetas se estancan entre el tráfico. 9. Los poetas posan para una foto grupal. 10. Los poetas aterrizan en sus papeles. 11. Los poetas se escapan de sus anfitriones. 12. Los poetas son recuperados. 13. Los poetas hablan de la guerra y la pobreza, amor y represión. 14. Los poetas son trasladados de un lugar a otro. 15. Los poetas se pelean entre ellos mismos. 16. Los poetas pichan entre ellos mismos. 17. Los poetas llegan otra vez tarde para la cena. 18. Los poetas se quejan de todo. 19. Finalmente se las da a los poetas una hora para ir de compras. 20. Los poetas buscan el bar más recóndito. 21. Los poetas intercambian libros y direcciones. 22. Los poetas agradecen a todo el mundo con canciones populares. 23. Los poetas dejan sus cuentas de hotel. 24. Los poetas se van para otros países. 25. Los poetas recuerdan y sonríen a sí mismos. Ya.
Origami. Mibukhad kining pulong, mitigom sa hangin, pagpadali sa lupad sa talabon, aminhanan sa akong adlaw, ngadto kanimo. Gilalang ko kining balak, gikan sa papel, gipilo-pilo ang gilayon sa atong panahon. Kining balak, usa ka talabon, inigbukhad sa iyang pako, ang papel, mutinaw ug mahawan.
Daybreak. Hovering over fringes of sleep, images skitter like water bugs on the mind's surface. Time trembles. Within the water's depths, woo the nothingness is understood as simply being in the moment, flowing, like the smooth movement the shoulder makes, as the foot, malleable as dawn, pivots to an empty position. Koans become clear as summer rain. Lightning flashes. Symbols announce the coming of warriors. Nothing seems impossible as body hurtles through push and pull of wakefulness. Birdsong winding its melody around fluttering lids. The mind seeing what it sees, because in a second, the moment is gone.
Jeepney. Consider honestly this piece of storm in our city's entrails, incarnation of scrap, what genius of salvage, what art or craft, what cunning. Its crib now molds our space, its lusty gewgaws our sight. In rut and in flood, claptrap sacks of traffic, jukebox of hubbub, I mark your pride of zigzag, heeds no one's limbs nor light. I sense our truth, laughing in our guts. I need no words to fix its text. This humdrum phoenix in our street is no enigma. It is a daily lesson of history, sweating in a tight corner. Its breakdowns and survivals compose our book of Revelation. It may be the presumptive engine of our lost mythology. Look, our macho incarnate, sweat towel slung round his neck. He collects us where the weathers of our feet strand us. He travels with his household gods, with the Virgin of sudden mercy. Our collective memory, he forgets no one's fare, nor anyone's destiny. See how our countrymen cling to this trapeze against all hazards. All our lives we shall be acrobats and patiently survive. Our bodies feed on proximity. Our minds rev up on gossip. We flock in small spaces and Twitter, a country of patience. Here is our heartland still. When it dreams of people, it returns empty to itself, having no power of abstraction, abandoned to itself and in no one's care. Jeepneys caroom through it, a long country of patience. Nights I lie awake, I hear a far-off tectonic rumble. Is it a figment of desolation from that reliquary of havoc, or out of its dusty hardihood, that obduracy of mere survival, a slow horde of thunder from underground, spirit of endurance?
Brace me somewhere. Things don't fall but fly apart. I'm thinking of the part in the story where Apollo moves to touch the nymph, and her mind, crossing crisis, canters through the woods and plots the escape route. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Believe instead how our common furies led us together and held us near. Don't touch me, you said, meaning do. The way of difficult child warding off help means to be held. I know you, like I know my own endurance, buckled under alone. We touch, and between us are more empty spaces than spaces that touch. How can one gravity help but find another? See how atoms crunch their wistful numbers and bind as they cluster together like stars. Nightly, the Pleiades and Berenice's hair hold fast their stars and keep them near. In all this turning, only we fly apart as we ascend the epic air where nothing hurts anymore or hums. Nothing's really the matter. Brace me somewhere. Gracias.
An origin of words. I caught the last word, tulang, as it faded into the screech of train brakes. You pulled up your sleeve to show the jutting elbow, the easy joint that allows you to bend and reach. It also means uncle, the sage who links us to the realm of gods. What for you is man, in my village is bone. What binds tongue to place? How did islands cradled between words erode into tracts of land embedding syllables in an alternate of sea and sky? The stark geography of knowing everything was once connected, adrift, though we are now in our search for destinations. Man, bone, and gods, slivers of Trinity stringing our myth of creation. Yet how could we not know in each other is a true language? Dalam hati. Yes, within the heart, though for us, dalam hati is sorrow spoken in the briefness of a word, bearable after the heart hinge on an oath. In the saying and the act, a caution, manyumpa, never to be broken. It will be years before we sense how tone hides intent and suffixes burden the moment of utterance. Together, we shift in Earth's slow axis, its steady turning, jolting, and pulling ridges apart into the ocean, the origin of depth, the fluid freight of words known as laut, whose wisdom wins water from shoreline before its tremors drown everything back in silence. Thank you.
Reminiscing Rumi, a dance of daylight. If it were desire turns planets on their axis, beloved. I have flared the rings of galaxies. If it were harbor makes waters part, I have brought oceans to their brink. If bird wings were prophets in the skies, I have flown expanded into their spell. For there is nothing I'd like than saying, come to me mystical, reveal me beyond my own phraseology, heed the burning bushes in my words. For before you, beloved, I am river swift in your limbs, the ruby among the stones, the echo on the mountain top, the root to the falling leaf. I will be the blaze before the sun. So hold me close tonight as I whirl dervish around your heart.
Buenas tardes. Muchas gracias, Colombia, por una intensa semana de palabras, poesía, danza y vida. Disfrutaré los recuerdos por siempre. Los quiero a todos. The Agonal. As in Emmanuel, dying proceeds in cold logic. When it triggers its way through, the body simply frays towards some end as death opts where to begin. The heart, brain, the lungs, each presaged by a symphony of cause. The parts failing in agony cease for an unburdening of lightness. From the keenest pain, release is precise. Gravity slows down blood for a return to the elements, the weakening heave for life, the austere words, the breath that in its retreat afflicts the flesh in its passage to the flora of sleep. Nothing is arbitrary. Death has its own priorities. So understand how Martha, in her grief, dares Jesus over her brother's death. If you had been here, he wouldn't have died. Kindness defies the fated loss. Believe, and she of mortal grasp fails amid the greatest mystery that is of flesh. For who was he to have kept the sick beggar from dying? For 3 days Lazarus' soul hovered. On the fourth the reek of plague began, for death is certain and weeping the sound of it. Thus, when he gleans the bright shaft breaking the odorous dark, and lifts and drags himself to the cave's mouth, the linens unfurling in a eulogy of light, at the threshold where he is sin and lives, he senses horror in his wonder. What has he risen from for another man to fall again? The story ends at the brink of our remains. In his finite self and divine, a man leaves alone another in suffering. In his finite self and divine, man torments at how nothing disrupts death. This is the miracle. Thank you.
El imposible realizado. 30º Festival Internacional de Poesía de Medellín.